President Trump is trying to use the power of his personality to impose peace on the world. He has commonly talked about how he doesn't like the United Nations, think that it's feckless. And so now he's trying to bring up what's called this board of peace that he thinks will basically be a supranational thing that goes over all kinds of countries and across regions and everything else in order to bring peace about. Problem is, this has some of the same shortfalls as the United Nations, but has a bunch of additional ones that make this virtually guaranteed, as close to guaranteed in human nature as you can get, to fail. It will not bring peace. It will not bring the world together, and it's going to not provide the end that President Trump is thinking. It makes a lot of headlines today. This was earlier today in Davos, where he signed this Board of Peace memorandum, had I think 20 or maybe it was 30 other heads of state that were all on the platform with him along there. It makes good video. It makes good headlines. Lots of people talking, makes Trump look really important. But when you get down, you don't even have to get all the way down into the weeds. When you just get into some of the details here, and we're going to talk about those today, just a few of the more really strong ones to show why this is a great video, but it's not good for peace. And it's almost certainly not going to result in anything positive. Let's jump right into it. First of all, here is President Trump trying to explain exactly what this Board of Peace is supposed to be.
Most powerful people in the world are in a position to have an incredible chance. I don't even call it a chance. I think it's going to happen. To end decades of suffering, stop generations of hatred and bloodshed, and forge a beautiful, everlasting, and glorious peace for that region and for the whole region of the world, because I'm calling the world a region. The world is a region. We're going to have peace in the world. And boy, would that be a great legacy for all of us. Everybody in this room is a star, or you wouldn't be here. There's a reason that you're here, and you're all stars. You're the biggest people, the most important people in the world, most powerful people in the world.
Okay, look, I mean, bringing peace to the world is a tremendous objective. I'm a strong advocate of that. That's exactly what I think that we should be doing. Heads of state all over the world should be working hard to bring peace to the world. That we should not be prioritizing military power to compel compliance on things, and we should be looking for diplomatic ways. Obviously, you hear us all the time on this channel. We loud that every day. Some of the words that Trump said in that soundbite we just put there are good. You know, let's don't work on bloodshed. Let's work on shared values. All those kinds of things are really good. Problem is, when it comes to actual execution and actual action on the ground, his words don't seem to line up at all. And I mean, just a couple of odd things in there. The world is a region. I mean, now I make comment on that, not just to poke fun at the president, but just if President Trump, as evidence is starting to pile up, suggests that he is having some real cognitive issues and may genuinely be suffering from dementia. We see it here. And you got to know that all these other leaders around the world are not blinded by the power of his personality. There are some real issues here. And believe me, nobody is going to pin their hopes for future on somebody that they think is constantly and continually degrading in his capacity. Because as we've had some experts on this channel here, we've shown you that these things don't ever get better. They only get worse. And we had a doctor on our show that not long ago that made this comment, who deals with dementia patients as his profession. He says the snapshot that you have today is the best that President Trump will ever be. Every day that goes further, it will degrade further. So the problems that we've been identifying here, even just in the last week or so, are only going to get worse. And when he's in the middle of, and just kind of pauses in the middle of his comments and says, the world is a region. What are you talking about? There are regions of the world. The world, I mean, self-evidently, it's not a region, but that's just what he says. And he just kind of, repeats it and goes off into the air. Then he talks about how, the most powerful people in the world are here. There was no one there from China. There was no one there from Russia. There was only one or two, I think, from all of the European Union. So the whole Western world, the primary leaders of the Western world were not there. And the two major superpowers, China and Russia, were not there either. So you can't say that these are the most powerful people. And if you want something that's going to try to bring global peace and you don't have the most important players on the stage, then you're obviously going to have a real problem. And that kind of shows you some of the people that were on the stage because they wanted it to look good. When you had that picture where it was kind of scanning past the people, it looks really impressive. Lots of powerful leaders on there. And some of them were important people. But when the ones that matter the most to global security aren't even there, then you see that it's a short-circuited even from the beginning. Well, one of the biggest problems that we have with this whole idea of a board of peace actually bringing peace is the foundation upon which it's laid. President Trump now, first of all, he just says that heading into this, here's the condition that he says. And of course, this is completely self-aggrandizing and talking about how great he is because he's using the 1 year mark of when he came into office. And he claims that the world is much safer, better, and richer than it was 1 year ago.
Today, the world is richer, safer, and much more peaceful than it was just 1 year ago. We put out all those fires. A lot of people didn't know, including me, that some of those wars were going on. And some of them were going on for, in one case, 32 years, in another case, 35 years, and another one, 37 years. We were very happy to stop the war that had started with India and Pakistan, two nuclear nations. And I was very honored when the Prime Minister of Pakistan said President Trump saved 10 and maybe 20 million lives.
Okay. This whole thing that it was a lot more peaceful now than it was a year ago is just belied by the physical evidence on the ground. And Trump is hedging his comments there, or he's pegging them to this claim, this completely fraudulent claim that he ended 8 wars. He didn't end 8 wars. It's been debunked over so many times. I need to go all in through it. But even the one he's talking about, India and Pakistan, that was solved by those nations. And I believe it was the Pakistani leader, or maybe it was the Indian leader, I'm sorry, that just said, listen, we solved this. You didn't do anything. Trump talked to the people. That's cool. That's useful. That's good. Don't claim that because those two powers that had the issues among themselves solved that version of it, and the issues are still quite relevant and quite hot. So it's going to require maintaining the momentum between the two parties to solve this. Trump didn't come up with some new thing, and that's the case across the board. But he believes he did, and then he repeats it incessantly, constantly telling everybody, I solved all these wars. I did this. This is all power of me. And that's one of the other problems of this whole board of peace. So, there's a lot of headlines around today that, is Trump trying to replace the UN? Is this going to be something that's going to continue to weaken the UN? That would only be an issue if this was an actual board, if this was an actual something that could wield some power. It's not. It is something that is purely and exclusively the power of personality of Donald Trump, the man, not even the president of the United States. This is outside of his role as the president. He theoretically could leave office in 3 years and continue to be the president of this board and keep people on it. But I shouldn't have to say this out loud, but I'm going to for those who may not know. Does anyone believe that any leaders of any country, much less actual powerful ones, are going to continue to be part of some board after he leaves office and listen to him when he has no levers of power? It's absurd. Of course they won't. They're not going to pay any attention to him now. I promise you, everybody who was on that dais is there because they think they have something to gain or they want to get something from the United States. They know that this is about the power of personality. And they know that other than whatever the United States can do, there's nothing extra that they can pull. And I bet there's a pretty good high probability of truth that every one of the people on that dais were pressured to do so by the United States. Probably others were too. I can imagine there was a lot of pressure put on the European leaders, only I think one of which, Viktor Orban, is the one that actually was on the stage. And I doubt, and I imagine the ones that were on there were probably asked to do so that it looked good on the stage. Because just imagine if there was, a handful of people or hardly anyone on the stage, and that would have made Trump look bad. So he had to have a good video image because it's all about his image. But he has set himself up just to show you why this is not any kind of competition to the United Nations, which, by the way, a lot of the criticism is completely valid in terms of what they do and what they fail to do. But this even has less substance than that because it doesn't have buy-in from the world. like at least the United Nations ostensibly does. This is about President Trump as the chairman of the board. He alone, unlike the Security Council, he alone has veto power. So he can decide who's on the board. He can take people off the board. The board, everybody gets a vote, but Trump has unilateral power over it. He can just decide to listen to the board or not listen to the board. So they'll know even before they come in that they actually have no power. And then we get to the next big problem with this. So it's not even a consultative body, or it's little more than just a consultative body. They can say whatever they want, but they literally have no power. Nobody on the board has any power to do anything, only President Trump. And President Trump only has power insofar as he is the president of the United States and has access to the United States Armed Forces. And that is the other issue. So instead of talking about trying to bring people together, trying to have a deeper understanding of people, trying to find common ground, trying to find ways to bring people together to say, all right, let's deal with the thorny issues here and find out where we have common ground that we can all agree to get the issues of war off the table so that we have peace left. Instead of doing those things, which is classic diplomacy, which is really hard work, and that means you have to give and take and allow other people to have wins, which is not something Trump is very much keen to do. He predicates this all on the power of military.
Much of this unprecedented success is possible because I rebuilt our military in my first term, and now we're making it even stronger. We have a budget of over $1 trillion this year, and next year we're going to $1.5 trillion. I also secured commitments from virtually all NATO allies to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP. Everybody but Spain. I don't know what's happening with Spain. Why would they not do that? They want a free ride, I guess, huh? Every country but Spain increased to 5%. I don't know why. We're going to have to talk to Spain. With America's renewed attention to security of the Western Hemisphere, I've stopped the invasion on our southern border and designated the drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And you probably saw that we've virtually stopped almost 100% all drugs coming in by water. And now we're going to stop them on land. The land is easy.
Okay. First of all, a point of clarification, because he said this many times, Europe is not spending 5% of GDP. Europe has committed to spend 5% of GDP over very many years, most of which is well beyond the end of Trump's terms. We'll see if any of them actually get there. Maybe they will, but there's no guarantee in that. But in any case, they haven't done it yet. He's saying it like it's a fact now. It's not. They only have an agreement. That's a big deal, because to go up that much when a lot of them weren't even at the 2% and suddenly think that they're going to fly up to 5% of total spending on GDP is just not a realistic figure. It's going to be very difficult for any nation to do that, especially in a situation where the economic situations are tepid at best and actually degrading in some other areas, some countries, specifically in Europe. But the idea that all of these peace, the board of peace, listen, that's a misnomer. When you're saying that we're going to bring peace because of the $1.5 trillion the United States we'll see if that passes, but that's what he's shooting for the fiscal year 2027 budget. So the next FY it takes effect in October. We'll see if he gets it. But he's saying that the United States military, as big and powerful as it is going to get a 50% increase in funding in a single year. Huge increase. And then he's touting what the European Union and NATO members are doing to increase over the number of years they're spending. So everything is about the military. He talked about we're going to solve, just like we solved the problem with drugs in the United States or in our hemisphere, complete fabrication. Zero truth to that whatsoever. People are aware of this. I'm going to say it out loud, but I promise you these heads of state are not stupid. Many people who watch just the mainstream media can be fooled of this because they're saturated with this message, but the heads of state aren't. They all have their own intelligence communities. They all have their eyes open and they can see things. They understand what's going on. This claim that Trump made here, that because he attacked all these drug boats last year, that solved the problem for drugs coming into the United States, and now it's virtually all of it coming on the water, is just complete fabrication. There's no truth to it at all. We've talked about it many times. Even a lot of the mainstream media has, that those drug boats that were hit, they can't even get to the United States. By blowing those boats up, you never even touch the issue of what's coming into the United States. As I've told you before, the vast issue where the illegal drugs come into the United States is through our port system, through our legal points of entry. They're smuggled in. Very little actually comes in on the water anyway. And none of the boats that we blew up could have carried drugs to the United States via water. They could only move it to somewhere else. And believe me, it's self-evident, but I'll say it again, that when you have these drug cartels where you have billions of dollars at stake and you start taking out one route, they will find another one. They'll find another way to get it there. They'll find overland routes. They'll take things through the air. They'll even go in water in different boats. They just won't use those boats that we're looking for, because you see virtually all of them were those speedboats. They'll just find different ones. They'll do things that, look for all the world like an actual fishing boat. For example, they'll find some way to do it. So you haven't stopped anything. I mean, literally nothing. So just forget about claiming that. But you see, even that is all claimed on blowing the boats up and killing people, on seizing the leader of Venezuela, of taking the oil from Venezuela. There's no peace in any of that. So what Trump is actually doing, aside from the handful of the rhetorical words which he said, which were fine and good and a good objective that we should seek, he's doing none of those things. And since he claims to be ending all of these wars and that the world is a lot safer place, and so you need to keep listening to me, that's his plan, I want to take a look at 3 issues here where evidence suggests that this is going to be anything but a more peaceful place, and things that he's touting as successes are in fact teetering on the edge of real trouble. First, let's start off. We're going to talk about Greenland, the Israeli-Hamas situation, and Ukraine. Just because we don't have enough time, I could also talk about Iran. I want to keep that one kind of on the side, so it really could have been 4. We could probably be days away from restarting that entire war. A lot of our American combat powers is moving to the region still. Lots already there. Israel is apparently getting a lot of preparation for an attack. So you can add that to the list. But I want to look at some of the sound bites here of what those issues are. Let's start with Greenland. Here's Trump in a separate interview talking about where things are with Greenland.
It's really being negotiated now, the details of it, but essentially it's total access. It's there's no end. There's no time limit. We're not doing a 99 or a 10-year or anything else, the famous 99-year deals that you hear about, because countries can't do it for that. Countries go on longer. And so I think it's going to be something that's very well, already it's being reviewed very well. Well, I noticed the stock market went up very substantially after we announced it. But the details are being negotiated now. It'll be very good.
So, because the GDP of Greenland is like $3.3 billion, but people are valuing Greenland of between $50 billion and almost $1 trillion. So what are you willing to pay for Greenland?
Well, I'm not going to have to pay anything. We're going to have total access to Greenland. We're going to have all military access that we want. We're going to be able to put what we need on Greenland because we want it. We're talking about national security and international security. So we're going to not have to pay anything other than the fact that we are building the Golden Dome. And the Golden Dome is going to be something that's going to be very amazing. It'll be Israel times probably 100.
Israel times 100. Okay, so he wants total access. He wants total control, doesn't want any limitations, but he doesn't want to pay anything for it. Now, we know for sure that you've seen the Greenland foreign minister, the prime minister, and you've seen the foreign minister we've shown here, Rasmussen from Denmark, categorically say they are not going to surrender anything to the United States. No territorial acquisition, no annexation, none of that kind of stuff. The people of Greenland definitely don't want to become part of the United States. So then that leaves, and they have left the door open to allow the United States to come in and according to the terms of the treaty which we have signed, that we can expand our military footprint should they need to do so. That's fine. But you see, Trump has been saying, no, we have to own it. Prior to this interview, he said we have to own it. Here, he says, no, not a 99-year lease. No, that's not good enough. We can't build on a lease. I don't know what he's talking about. That happens every day. But he says, no, we have to own it. Well, the United States may want to own it, but if you don't take care of the sovereignty issue, if you don't take it from them and you don't have concurrence by the other side, by the Greenland and Denmark, then there is no solution, and you still are at an impasse. Now, late yesterday afternoon and early again today, the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte made a lot of headlines by saying, hey, I had a conversation with Trump. I think we've got I think Trump actually said the outlines of a deal. We've got that stuff knocked out. So 2 thumbs up, everything's going good. And afterwards, Mark Rutte was interviewed to ask him about the status of those agreements. Notice the one thing here he says wasn't even on the agenda.
And the Danes and sovereignty, is that all assured?
We didn't discuss at all about that issue. So we discussed how can we protect Greenland, how can we protect the wider Arctic region. And again, I think President Trump was the one who reinvigorated NATO at the summit in The Hague with the famous 5%. I think we can be thankful for the fact that he again has been able to take leadership on this issue. How can we collectively protect the Arctic?
Come on, man. The protecting the Arctic has never even been on the table. There's never been an issue with that. There hasn't been, there isn't now, there won't be. That is already taken care of our portion of the Arctic. We can't control the whole Arctic because it's international waters. And Russia has a huge border in the Arctic. You're not going to take that over. So whatever you think you're going to do here is only about the territorial waters around Greenland or around Canada, around the United States, etc. That's all anybody has the authority to talk about here. So that's not at stake. Russia's not trying to stop that. China's not trying to stop that. Nobody's trying to block off our access to the Arctic where we have borders. So just ignore that part there because that was complete BS. Don't ignore the first part where he's talking about, though, we didn't even talk about the sovereignty issue. That's the key issue with Greenland. They say, the Danes and the Greenlanders, that sovereignty is non-negotiable. It's not going to be given, period. You can't buy it. We're not going to sell it. So don't even worry about that. The only thing we're willing to do is go with our treaty obligations. That's what we have. That's all they're willing to offer, which we could have had without any of this drama at all, without any of these threats at all, without Trump telling, that's their problem, meaning Greenland, if they didn't want to give or sell anything to it. But so what it's looking like now, at least what Trump is saying and what these other people are agreeing to still, they're saying is that you can just apply the terms of the deal that we have in place, which was always on the table and it's never been off the table. You can't do anything more. So I don't know how, well, I do probably know Trump is going to try and spin this as a success when it's going to be is everything that he claimed he was going to do is not going to happen. And the one thing he's going to be able to do is what was already on the table. So that's not peace. That's just a lot of words. It's a lot of angst and causes a lot of friction with the members of NATO, with Canada, certainly with Denmark specifically, and Greenland. And at the end of the day, it's going to end up being nothing, but he'll be spinning that as a success. That works to a lot of his followers. It doesn't work to the global population at large, and definitely not to a lot of leaders who see right through all of this stuff. Next is the issue of the Gaza Strip. So even though as of last October, there was allegedly a ceasefire, there hasn't been a real ceasefire. There continues to be Israeli attacks in Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and there continues to be violence, and there's routinely people in the Palestinian areas that continue to be killed. So it is less than it was. It is still present. It's kind of been on a low boil. But now then the idea is we're going to bring peace to that too. Well, that got the attention of Vladimir Putin, actually. So Putin was offered a position on this board of peace. He has not yet decided whether he's going to accept it, but he has suggested that he's willing to put a lot of money down as long as it helps the Palestinian people.
The main point is that the entire process should have a favorable effect on a long-term settlement of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, based on the relevant decisions of the United Nations. And for it to be taken into account, it is necessary that the inherent needs and wishes of the Palestinians be taken into account. This concerns the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip and its basic social infrastructure, healthcare systems, water supply, and the establishment of an uninterrupted food supply. Therefore, already now, even before we decide the question of participation in the composition and in the work of the Board of Peace itself, considering Russia's special relations with the Palestinian people, we could, I think, send to the Board of Peace $1 billion from the Russian assets frozen back under the previous U.S. administration.
Okay, so you see, Putin's got a lot of things going on here. First of all, if you want to look at somebody who's actually, at least rhetorically, talking about peace, it's what Putin just said here. Because what the United States has just said is that we, and I'm going to get to this in a second, with Jared Kushner, what he's saying about bringing peace to the area, it's all focused on Israel. Here, Vladimir Putin says, okay, you can't have a settlement unless both sides are in agreement to it. I keep talking about this over and over. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israeli-Hamas war, or all these other conflicts, any other conflict. Unless you have agreement on both sides on one set of terms, you're never going to get to an end. You'll just have a continuation of conflict until one side is totally exhausted and defeated by the other. You know that certainly Israel wants that to be the case. They want a complete victory. They don't want to have to concede anything. So we'll see how Trump's ever-did so-called peace in this area plays out. But you see Putin here saying, look, we need to take a look at the Palestinian side. We're willing to put $1 billion of the money, of our money that you have frozen and prevented from us, but we'll allow $1 billion of that to go to help the Palestinian people. And you got to have rebuilding the infrastructure, social issues, food supply, uninterrupted food supply at that. So all of these things that are absolutely necessary for the long-term sustainability of the Gaza area. Now, he didn't get into there, but obviously beyond that, be able to survive and rebuild and have something to live in so that you have some reason to have a future and a hope that you don't say we're just going to continue to have violence. Hamas has said that one of the key issues right now is that there has to be a ceasefire and a complete demilitarization, a complete disarming of Hamas. Hamas has said what we aren't going to do is just unilaterally disarm in the absence of any kind of concessions from the Israeli side. And he's talking about some major security concessions here. Otherwise, he said it's just submission. It's capitulation. It's not reaching a negotiated settlement. So they say until we get something, we're not going to give something like this. So there is a big issue at stake right there about what that's going to mean. Well, if President Putin is focused on the Palestinian side, Jared Kushner and Donald Trump are focused on the Israeli side.
Demilitarization, this is something we're starting now that we have a new government in Gaza. This government will be working with Hamas on the demilitarization to really take the principles that were agreed to in the document to the next phase, and hopefully that will be successful. Without that, we can't rebuild. So if Hamas does not demilitarize, that will be what holds back Gaza and the people of Gaza from achieving their aspiration, and that's very important. So the next 100 days, we're going to continue to just be heads down and focused on making sure this is implemented.
And, you know, he's talking heads down. Everything is about the Israeli side. I think that Jared Kushner did go to the Palestinian area one time, I think in the Gaza Strip, if I'm not mistaken, but I think that was more for a photo op. But he spends the majority of his time talking to the senior Israeli leaders, and you know all the reasons why that is. But there's almost no focus. In fact, the only time he's mentioning the Palestinian people or the Hamas is it's in a derogatory, derisive statement that they're going to be responsible if this doesn't work. If they don't do what they're supposed to here, that unlocks the help, etc. So you're asking them to say, just trust Israel. Take all of your national security capability and your self-defense capability away, all of it, and then just trust that Israel's going to do what it's supposed to, even though it hasn't for the decades prior to this. And then we see that Israel itself has already said there is a 2-month ultimatum. You either disarm or we'll renew the war. Under the plan, Hamas would be given 2 months from the establishment of the Board of Peace, which has now been established. So 2 months from now, a technocratic administration in Gaza to surrender its weapons. If it fails to do so voluntarily, the Israeli army will intervene. Now, I told you a second ago that that's what Israel wants. They don't want to concede anything. Now, just think in the current situation, the current terms that are available from a position of strength with the full backing of the U.S. government, do you think that Israel will say, all right, Hamas, tell you what, you want to disarm, we want you to disarm, That's going to unlock all the investment in your place, et cetera. So we'll concede these major security issues here. We'll withdraw from all these areas. We'll do other things that you want to do. We'll concede some big points here so that you'll concede those big points. They're not going to do that. Why would they do that? They're not going to now, unless they were made to. Why? They should, and the president of the United States should put pressure on Israel to make some major concessions if peace is the genuine outcome. But it doesn't appear that peace is the genuine outcome. It appears that all they're trying to do is to lay the foundation for Israel to go back into war and then blame it on the Palestinian side, or blame it on the Hamas side in particular. And then all the things that have been happening since October 7th, 2023, after the Israelis started the attack into the Gaza Strip and the methodical dismantling of it, will apparently return. I don't know how that's going to be spun as peace, other than they'll just blame the other side because they'll continue to focus on military means as the way to achieve their objectives. That's not peace. That's compulsion and coercion to comply with terms issued by the stronger power. One other issue there that I want to talk about there is the Russia-Ukraine war. So obviously Putin, in that comment I just showed you a second ago, is by saying, hey, use some of our funds here, frozen funds that you have to do this, is kind of a bit of a poke in the eye, saying, hey, you have our money, but you can use some of it for this purpose here, wanting to make himself look like the good guy, wanting to put separation and distance between the United States and Europe. Definitely Putin and Russia and some of their media have been very much patting Trump on the back and saying, yeah, I think this is a great idea. This whole Greenland thing, that's cool, man. Man, Trump would be a really big figure and a great compliment to the United States and a great acquisition. He'll be a great leader because he's trying to build up Trump, because he knows it's just like, fingernails on a chalkboard to Europe, because he understands that. So he's trying to put more enmity between the two, because if he can split the United States and Russia, then he makes his job a lot easier. That is not lost on Volodymyr Zelensky. First of all, let me show you here what Trump said at Davos here about where he is on talking to the relevant parties.
What do you get the deal today?
We'll have to see what
do you mean by total?
We're meeting with Russia. That'll take place tomorrow. They're going to be meeting with President Putin. I had a very good meeting with President Zelensky. Everybody wants to have the war end.
On your board of President Trump, are you just...
So he doesn't talk any details here. He says, I talked with Zelensky. Everything's moving forward. We're getting all this stuff worked out. But then when you want to hear what Volodymyr Zelensky has, who, by the way, has been kind of ignored in a lot of this. Everybody's been talking about Davos and certainly a lot about Greenland, the potential war in Iran, all the stuff going on down in Venezuela over the last number of weeks here. Kind of lost in all this has been the focus on Ukraine. Now, as I've shown you periodically, and I still keep this, talking so you can understand what's going on, the air war continues on relentlessly. The power system is almost destroyed in Ukraine, especially in the big cities of Kiev, Kharkiv, and Odessa, especially the capital city. There's whole sections where they don't even have any power. Their manpower is a big problem. They're bleeding people at the front. Their people are fleeing from the fighting, et cetera. The front continues to move forward. And Zelensky is not the front and center. He's used to being front and center at these things. And in fact, he made a speech that refers to an American movie to show you the mood that he's in now.
Everyone remembers the great American film Groundhog Day with Bill Murray and Andy McDowell. Yes, but no one would want to live like that. Repeating the same thing for weeks, months, and of course for years. And yet, that's exactly how we live now. And it's our life. And every forum like this one proves it. Just last year, here in Davos, I ended my speech with the words, Europe needs to know how to defend itself. A year has passed, and nothing has changed.
Well, I don't even know what he's talking about there, honestly. He said, I said this, I thought he was going to say something else. He said, I said at this forum a year ago that Europe needs to know how to defend itself. Well, there's been a whole lot of advancements in Europe about their security. They've had this rearm and rebuild European military. They've all committed to 5% of GDP over some number of years into the future. I mean, they've actually taken some steps. They're talking about Germany, talking about making the biggest military in the on Europe. You've had France and UK talk about how they want to increase their capacity. So Europe is actually taking some steps towards its own national security. His real beef is that they don't seem to be taking efforts to increase their security in Ukraine. Now, they've given them a lot of money. Just a month or so ago, they committed $90 billion to keep the government running for the next 2 years. But there's just not a lot of weapons and ammunition to give because they just don't have it anymore. They're trying to increase their capacity. It's not, they're all looking toward their own national security first. And then with any extra, then they'll slide it on over to Ukraine, but it's not enough to change anything on the front line. And that is the problem. When he's talking about Groundhog Day, he does have a point there, because I mean, all we talk about year after year is, the just and lasting peace for Ukraine, Keir Starmer's favorite phrase, or Emmanuel Macron, who's just been relentless in talking about, strength and stuff and support for Ukraine. And yet you see on the ground, it just trickles of stuff. And Ukraine doesn't have the manpower. So Zelensky has some complaints about what he's getting, although why should they do more? Why should anybody risk war with Russia? Russia has all the manpower it needs. It has all the defense industrial base it needs. It has all the supplies and equipment and raw materials that it needs to sustain this war indefinitely. So the firepower advantage they have, the manpower advantage they have, the industrial advantage, all those things will continue to swamp. That means the long-range missiles. That means the new calibers of missiles like the Oreshnik, some of the hypersonics that continue to advance, the air power, which continues to advance, the number of missiles, which continues to advance, and then, of course, on the front line. Everything other than Kupiansk, and I'm going to deal with that separately in a separate show, but other than that, Kupiansk, everything continues to move to the west, and some things in the north continue to move to the south. He sees the writings on the wall. They can't even keep the power on in the capital city. The people are getting worn out. There's no peace on the horizon other than the defeat of the Ukraine side. The diplomatic end that could have been reached has always been rejected. It's still on the table. There is still motivation and incentive for the Russian side to agree to a negotiated deal that's somewhat less than their maximalist demands. But if you don't take those, which is all the territorial acquisitions of the 4 regions, et cetera, we've talked about that a lot, without agreeing to those demands, all of them, Russia will simply keep killing people, keep taking more territory, and eventually you'll be ground to dust. Whether there's a break or it's a slow grind to death, the death is the same result either side. Just depends on how long it's going to take. The end is already known. Zelensky's frustrated at that. He considers it Groundhog Day, and he's got a point there, because the Europeans don't want to deal with reality. Trump doesn't want to deal with reality. You see, he didn't even want to answer the questions. Yeah. We'll figure that out. But I talked to Zelensky, and we're going to send Witkoff back to Russia again. I don't know what has been accomplished in the previous rounds, but it's always good that they're talking. I guess you can't reach an end unless you're finally talking. But I'm telling you, until the United States, when Witkoff goes in, is willing to concede to the requirements that Putin has, he'll just keep going. He has no reason to do anything else. He has whatever it is, 75, 80% support at home. There's nothing that's going to diminish that. His economy is it's difficult. It's got some warning signs, but it's stable, and there's no evidence it's going to change anything in the future. And you see the Ukraine side has virtually no economy, and it's not stable, and it's continuing to deteriorate. Putin said, I'll just let the status quo keep going on until finally we'll ground them to dust. That's just where we are. So when you hear this board of peace, when you're talking about the Iran-Iraq war, the potential Iran war, restarting that, when you're talking about things even in Venezuela, that's been solved as far as getting the head of state out, but all the issues remain. We'll see how any of that stuff plays out. Drugs have not been stopped from coming into the United States at all. You haven't even affected any of those issues. The issue in the Gaza Strip is still likely to result in more war coming in the next couple of months. And that's, of course, assuming that the Iran war doesn't start even before that, which it very well could. And then the Russia-Ukraine war is just going to continue to grind on. There's no actual peace efforts being made that are realistic and legitimate. So all this stuff with the Board of Peace is a bunch of photo op and video opportunities for President Trump, and it'll be forgotten tomorrow. But there's no fundamentals, there's no framework, there's no power to do anything else that's different than what's already been going on here. And until the players are willing to do something besides just try and kill everybody we don't like, then we're going to have a lot less peace. That's just the truth of it. We will be back with you probably later this afternoon. We have some additional information we got to share. I've got some other things I've got to do on other networks in between now and then. Look forward to talking to you on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Thank you. You know, I don't try to talk you into buying gold or tell you how to run your stock portfolio, but there is a way you can help us. Subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with somebody you love.